So let's remember what we're talking about. In light of the urgent humanitarian and security crisis on our border, the President is requesting $5.7 billion for physical barriers and border security. For some context, that's just about one-tenth of 1% of federal spending. One-tenth of 1%. For physical barriers like the fences and barriers which already exist, which Democrats have previously voted for with enthusiasm. Back in 2006, then Senators Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and our colleague, the current Democratic leader, all voted for more than $1 billion to construct about 700 miles of physical barriers. Then Senator Obama called it badly needed funding for better fences and better security that should help stem some of the tide of illegal immigration. That was Senator Barack Obama. Senator Schumer later described his vote proudly, quote, miles of border fence that create a significant barrier to illegal immigration. As recently as 2015, Secretary Clinton boasted, quote, I voted numerous times to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in. That's Hillary Clinton. Well, Mr. President, obviously that was then. And today the new Speaker of the House is trying to argue that a physical barrier is, quote, immoral. Immoral? Today, my friend, the Democratic leader is proposing to add a Senate shutdown to the partial federal government shutdown and block even more of the people's business, all to avoid more of what he already voted for. Maybe the Democratic Party was for secure borders before they were against them. Or maybe they're just making it up as they go along. Or maybe they are dead set on opposing this particular president on any issue, for any reason, just for the sake of opposing him. Now look, walls and barriers are not immoral. How silly. Enforcing our laws wasn't immoral back in 2006, when then Senator Clinton, then Senator Obama, and our friend, the Democratic leader, were proud to vote for physical barriers. The only things that have changed between then and now are the political winds and, of course, the occupant of the White House. So this is no newfound, principled objection. It's just political spite, a partisan tantrum being prioritized over the public interest. So for more than 2 weeks, they've indulged in that partisan tantrum rather than negotiate in good faith over border security funding, hardly something that should be a partisan subject in the first place. They put that partisan tantrum ahead of keeping a quarter of the government open. And now they're saying their partisan tantrum is more urgent than pressing legislation that concerns our alliance with Israel and the Syrian civil war. Well, look, Mr. President, I hope that isn't the case. I hope that our Democratic colleagues don't pile on even more pointless obstruction. I hope they don't block the Senate from turning to this important legislation, by the way, that they support. We'll find out later today. We all know what is necessary to move past the funding impasse, a negotiated solution that can pass the House, earn 60 votes here in the Senate, and gets a presidential signature.
And joining me now is Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs, member of the House Judiciary Committee. Hi, Congressman. How are you?
Hi. Great. How are you doing, Lisa?
I'm doing well. And Congressman, you also recently sat down with the president on Saturday to talk about this very issue. So what is it going to take to break this stalemate?
Well, what's going to take is Chuck Schumer is going to have to bite the bullet, and they're going to have to fund the wall. They need to pay $5 billion which is a substantial reduction from the $25 billion that it will take to actually build the wall. They need to move. It's all in Chuck Schumer's court right now. There's nothing on the president's desk to veto or sign. This is Chuck Schumer's shutdown right now.
What incentive do you think Democrats have to come to the table or to negotiate or to give President Trump any funding? Nancy Pelosi is going to take over likely as Speaker of the House just next week. And Democrats are going to have control of the House. So, what incentive do they have to play ball here?
What's going to incentivize them are two things, is if they really love this country and recognize that the border is insecure right now and that we have to have a wall. That's one thing. The other thing that I think will do it is if they realize that their base are a number of bureaucrats, and they're the ones who aren't getting paid in the shutdown, and they're going to get some pressure from their base to come to the table. And the reality is they're the ones that have chosen to shut this down, actually, not the president.
Well, and, Congressman, isn't this really a lot of this about politics? Because the way I see it, you look at a lot of Democrats, including Senator Chuck Schumer, they voted for fencing along the southern border. Clearly, they're not against some sort of physical structure being along the southern border. So isn't the wall just a semantics game and a politics game? Isn't this just about denying President Trump that key campaign promise that he made?
Yeah, I actually, believe it or not, I have friends in Congress who are Democrats, and we talk, and I asked them, I said, what's the deal here? One lives by a border wall. I said, what's going on? I said, won't you give us anything for a border wall? I live in a border state. We're concerned. And they said, well, you know what? One said, I don't like the rhetoric that President Trump uses. And the other one said, we're not going to give President Trump a victory. And so what I'm telling you is it is politics, Lisa. That's the problem, is they don't want President Trump to have a victory. And in so doing, they're preventing this country from having the safety. When I hear people, just today even, some more people from the border telling me, Andy, they're crossing our property. We've got to have border wall. And you know what? That's what we need to do. Not politics. We need good policy, which includes a border wall.
Well, and speaking of the policy aspect, even beyond the wall, the big crisis we're facing right now on the southern border is asylum seekers. And we've seen a massive influx in people seeking asylum from Central America. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about what's going on with asylum seekers and why we are seeing this influx of Central Americans doing just that?
Well, what's happening is when an asylum seeker comes across the border, we do an immediate little evaluation, and then they end up staying. We can't keep them longer than 20 days. And so we can't process them because the influx is so great. I mean, there's thousands upon thousands. And so, for instance, in the Phoenix metro area, there's been almost 4,000 of them released since October until about 2 weeks ago. That's the total from 2 weeks ago that are coming here seeking asylum. They're released into the interior. We pay for them to go wherever they want to go because we can't afford to hold them. And that's what's happening. It's catch and release, and we're giving them a notice. Please come back, we say, for your court hearing to prove that you really are someone who qualifies. And you know what? Almost 90% of them don't even qualify for asylum, yet they're already here in this country. Most of them never go back for their hearing. That's what's going on with the asylum policy that we have today.
Well, and something that's not really been reported as much is this deal with Mexico and keeping asylum seekers in Mexico while they're waiting for their immigration cases, because as you pointed out, 90% don't actually get granted asylum in immigration court. And the problem is a lot of them go missing in between that time and when their cases come up. So why is this so important?
Well, if you can keep them in Mexico, which, by the way, has offered asylum, like, for instance, to the caravan, most of the asylum seekers, they've offered them asylum. If you keep them there, then it gives us time to process them before they get released into the interior, because once they're released in the interior, they're effectively lost until they commit a crime or something like that, where we can actually track them down and ICE can get hold of them, except for unless there's a sanctuary city that's not going to cooperate with ICE. So we have all kinds of obstacles that keep us from actually controlling the folks that are coming into our country. That's why the Mexico, keeping them there until they're ready to come in or qualified to come in is so important, because it's going to reduce the number of people who come into this country illegally that we can't track, we can't vet, we don't know who they are. Is
Congress doing anything to address the asylum issues we're seeing?
We have basically put together a series of bills. I know the Freedom Caucus has put together some ideas and some bills to try to get this going. But the first thing that has to happen really is the border wall. And when I talk to my Border Patrol agents here, they say, Andy, we need the Border Patrol, we need the border wall first, because once we have the border wall, it's going to actually put people into a channel so they're coming to the ports of entry. We can control it better, and then we can start dealing with interior problems like asylum.
Well, real quick, how long do you think this shutdown is going to last?
Well, since the president's holding firm and the Democrats have said they're not willing to budge on this, I would think we're going to go at least a couple of weeks, actually.
All right. Well, Congressman, I really appreciate you joining us and giving us some insight on this issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Our next guest was inside the Situation Room for today's meeting, incoming House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Congressman, thanks for being here tonight. You just heard that conversation. A lot of people are wondering, how can there be a cabinet meeting, a briefing in the Situation Room, 8 leaders from both parties, from both chambers of commerce, and the president, and the White House just told us nothing changed today? How can that be?
Well, it's what was the talk there. And I thank the president for putting the meeting together, because that's what has changed. The president, remember, the vice president went to Senator Schumer, who Senator Schumer could determine whether government stayed open or was shut down more than 13 days ago. And he made an offer to them. Schumer never got back to him, shut the government down, because what your viewers have to remember is not a simple majority in the Senate. It takes 60 votes. So it's the Democrats who decided about a shutdown. The president stays here with the vice president, wants to work this out. Democrat leadership leaves. So he brought everybody together inside the Situation Room. We were invited to go because we were going to have a briefing. That's what happens in Situation Rooms, about the crisis that's happening at the border today, the rise of those who are trying to come across the border. But more importantly, just within the last 48 hours, we had a violent mob kind of run across, try to get across the border as well. So we were having a briefing with the Secretary of Homeland. She couldn't get past the first sentence before she was interrupted by Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and they pretty much stayed on script, almost like they had written a script. And they went through what they wanted to do, these 6 appropriation bills, move through, and then not do anything with Homeland Security. And
what should our takeaway be from that, Congressman? I mean, is this about border security? Is this about money? Is this about the change of leadership that's about to happen and waiting till after that? What is this standoff really about?
It's not about money, because we have to appropriate within the dollar figure we've already set. So we can fund this easily, as you can see. The question is, philosophically, do you want to have open borders, or would you want to have a border that you actually can control? And do you want to open the government? So what the president really was able to pick up on, and it came up across with some of the Democrats, it might be easier for them to have this discussion after the vote for Speaker tomorrow. So the president said, let's go back on Friday after the Speaker vote, and maybe you'll be in a different position, could actually start negotiating so we could get the government open and secure our border.
Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer emerged from that meeting saying that Republicans refused, or the president in particular, refused to answer one question. Here's Nancy Pelosi today.
We have given the Republicans a chance to take yes for an answer. We have taken their proposals unamended by any House bipartisan amendments, but just staying true to what the Senate has already done. Our question to the president and to the Republicans is, why don't you accept what you have already done to open up government? And that enables us to have 30 days to negotiate for border security.
Perhaps you can answer that question for us.
Well, very, very clearly, for the last 13 days, the Democrats would offer nothing. Today, they offered nothing. There was only one side inside that room that was willing to compromise and come to an agreement. The number of times I had to ask the Democrats, okay, what is your offer then? Or I couldn't even get them to define what's border security. They say they believe in border security. Then I took it to the next level. Okay, could you define what border security is for me? Because they don't want to talk about having a wall. That's an element of border security. When you look at San Diego, El Paso, Yuma, Arizona, these have all cut down and made the community safe by more than 95% after being able to put some border security wall up as well.
I've got to leave it there, Congressman. There's a big couple of days coming up. Just finally, how long does this shutdown last? Your expectations there?
Well, this could be solved very quickly. I'm hopeful after the Speaker vote, they are in a different position, that they're willing actually to negotiate, find compromise, and bring this government back open, but also secure our border.
Congressman Kevin McCarthy, great to have you on the program tonight after a busy day. We appreciate it.